All right, so we've seen so far how to deal with the data, even though it's really simple. We get the data, we set the data, we didn't have to process it. We'll see it later when we have some more complex chart. Then we handle some of the view. We saw how to integrate React lifecycle. We saw it on function component, we saw it on class component. We drew our first chart using rectangle in D3. And then we styled it just with the fill. We didn't do much on the styling. Now the last section that I want to show you is how to do user interaction. And in terms of interaction, again, we can handle those things using D3, or we can handle that using React or third-party libraries. So let's start by going through the most basic way to kind of handle user gesture. And that's actually vanilla JSX. We don't need to use D3. And we can let React handle that if we want. So to do that, let me just show you. Let me remind you in case you need a reminder with React. And what we're going to do is let's create a class. Again, we're going to use our template for that. So let's set up a component. Let's call it circle with events. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use SVG to draw a circle, and then we're going to use events to show you how to handle that. That's going to be all pure JSX. So let's set our entry point to our new component, circle with event. And inside of it, we're going to set it up without D3 first. So just to show you how it works. So inside of the component, we don't need to really set any constructor because we don't need the reference. We don't need any of that stuff. So we can actually get rid of the entire constructor. We don't need to use the component did mount hook. It's not necessary. What we can do is we can just take the div. We don't even need a div element. What we can do is we can just wrap it with an empty tag like that because we don't need div. Now inside what we're going to do is we're going to create an SVG element. We do need to give it a width and a height. And inside our SVG element, we're going to create a group element. And inside of our group element, we're going to create a circle. And for a circle, we're going to use transform to do a translate of 150 by 150, and that's going to take 150 pixel for a circle. Then on the circle we need to specify the radius, and we need I think when we finish, yeah, we can close the tag, and now we should see. Here's our circle. We didn't put any fill to it. We just wanted a circle going, so that's good enough. Now the next part is really setting up the event, and this is really when we talk about event. If you look at the ReactJs org docs, they talk about how events are being set up. So again, it's called synthetic events. It's a cross-browser wrapper around the browser native event. So it allows us to generate the event just like we have it in HTML, and it's following the same syntax. You can see here in the doc, it shows you, all the API and what you can use. On a mobile keyboard, all that stuff is really mimicking the HTML. So what we can do here, it's pretty simple. We can set up our event. If you start typing on, you're going to see all the different events that exist. So for example, we can use an on mouse over event, and then we can either put an inline or call another method. So for example, if we just want to do an inline, we will just do an event. Oops, an event. I keep getting typos. So we're going to do the event, and then again, we're going to do an inline function. And in the event, there's a couple of things we can do. For example, we can use, just like in HTML, we can stop propagating. So in case we're doing binding or we don't want the event to pop, we can stop that. And then what we can do is we can create an on mouse event handler just to see our event passing to another method. So I'm going to pass the event, and now what we need to do is we just need to set up that function so we can call that. So just we called it on mouse event handler. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm setting an on mouse event handler, and then we can handle anything we want here. For example, I can just typing a console log here. What we are passing the event. So if we pass the event, that's why I'm passing it here, because I want to show it to you. The type is going to be on HTML, it would have been mouse event, but since it's the synthetic React, it's going to be react.mouse event. Okay, and we can put a break line point to see what's inside of the event. So we can go ahead and do that. I haven't configured the IDE for debugging, so to configure that, I'm just clicking the configuration, and I can add a JavaScript debugger. I'm going to use the Chrome, and let's call it app, and the URL is going to be http:/localhost 3000. And what else do we need to store it? Apply that. Okay. And now we got our debugger running. So once we mouse over, that should call that. So let's run it in a debug mode. And I set it to to Chrome. So once we're running the debug mode, and I'm hovering over. Oops, it didn't do that. I'm gonna refresh. Here we go. So it end up here, and you can look inside of the event, and you see it's calling it synthetic base event, and that's the mouse over, and it's it's passing all those the target, the event, the current target. So it's passing all that stuff just like HTML. So that's how you're going to be setting it up. So we can set up any events we want. We can put an on mouse over, on mouse out, on click event. For example, I'll just show you an example. Let's say we want to add an on click event, so we can just add on click, and again I can pass the event. And what we can do, instead of calling another method, we can just set an alert. We'll just call it on click, just so we see it working. And now that I'm running it again, and I'm clicking, you see we get the message. So this is, you should be familiar with this. This is how we do it in React. There's nothing new here. If we want to do the same thing with D3, the process is really similar. So I'll show you how to do that. First, let's create another component. Go into terminal. Let's create our new component, and let's call the component circle with D3 events, and our entry point, let's point again to circle. Oops, wait, I need to create it first. Circle with 3 events. There you go. So I created another component just to show you the difference when we're using D3. And again, this is up to you. I'm showing you the two options, so when you start creating your chart, you'll know the different options that you have in terms of interaction, right? User gestures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the code as is, but let's do this. For the on the render, I'm just going to add an SVG tag. So let's get rid of all this stuff, and I'm going to do this. I'm just going to put an empty tag, and inside of that, let's put it neatly. There you go. Looks a little bit nicer. And inside, I'm going to create an SVG tag that can be our wrapper, and we can give it an ID of SVG, and it needs again a width. Let's get a width of 500 and a height of 500, and that's about it. We can close that tag. So now we got an SVG. It doesn't like this. I want to show you, if you don't feel like, okay, it fixed itself. I just wanted to show you, you can run again what I showed you in the first lecture. You can just use yarn format. So if at any point it doesn't format neatly for you, yarn format, and then it can clean up your code according to the rules that we set. So in case it's barking and it doesn't like how it's being formatted, you see? Look how neat it formatted for us. Okay. Now, now that we have the SVG tag and we have the draw method, we don't have the draw method. We put everything inside of the component will mount. So what I want to do is let's make it similar to the way we did before. We're just going to create a draw method, and in our draw method we can handle drawing the circle. So I want it to look exactly like we had it before. So this time we're going to do D3 select, and this time we have an ID. We saw how we do it with a reference, we saw how we do it with class. I just want you to see it this time with an ID. So if we want an ID, we need to put the hash, or since we have only one SVG on our DOM, we don't even need the ID. We can just put select SVG, and it's going to select our SVG tag. Now what we need to do is we need to append a G tag, just like we did in our JSX code. And we need to add an attribute of transform with a translate of 150 by 150. And then we need to set an attribute for the radius. I'm just doing the same as what we did with SVG. This time I'm just typing it in D3. And then now, if we take a look at what's happening on the screen, let's take a look and refresh it. Let's see what's happening. I'm appending a G, but I need to also append a circle, right? Oops, how is this super together? So we need to append the G, and we need to append our circle in order to draw that. Let's take a look now. Here we go. So we got a circle. I haven't filled it with anything. I can do it at the SAS file, but we don't need to. I just want to show you the interaction. Now, if we want to add mouse click event with D3, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to call the on attribute, and then we can do click, and inside of our click we can do an inline function, or we can call a function. It's up to us. And if we want to mimic the same thing we had before, we can just do once you click it, It's going to give us an alert on click, and we can do the same with the on mouse over. We can, just so you understand, now what we're doing is we're not using synthetic event. Now it's really mimicking the HTML. So our event is going to be a mouse event, and then I can call again the on mouse over handler and pass that event, and then we're going to need to create a function for that. So I can put it here. So let's just make sure I'm not having a typo. So I'm going to create a function on mouse over event, and take a look here. I'm using the same event as the synthetic from React. I'm going to be using the same synthetic event, so everything is really the same, and we can do a console log of our handler, and we can put a breaking point here just like we did before. So let's run it in debug mode. Here we go. Once I hover over, I'm back here, and let's look at the event. See, this time I'm getting a mouse event. It doesn't set the synthetic because I set it through the D3. So you can see the difference. Once I'm using the JSX, it's setting my events inside of React. When I'm doing D3, I'm kind of overriding the React, and I take over control over the DOM, and the event that I'm getting is really, it's a pure mouse event. Let's look at it again. Now once I click that, here is my event. So you can see the difference, and we're going to talk later about the benefit of, who should control the DOM. Is it we should let React, or we should do it manually? But at this point, I just want to show you the two different ways to do that, and then later on you can decide how you want to build your chart.